2331 Last square. The sun had risen above the realm of clouds and mountains, above the world of Ariel's game. The ethereal, glistening bridges turned to snow under its radiance. Sunny was standing on the edge of the caldera, his battered armor slowly repairing itself. As he glanced north, there, far away, the surviving crystal wasps had landed on the slopes of the snowy peak and disappeared into the myriad entrances to the ice hive. The adversary move is over. Taking a deep breath, he glanced west. There, the giant body of the snow worm was coiled around the volcano, its pale flesh standing out starkly against the black ash. Then, he glanced east. Somewhere out there, the clockwork giant was standing in the ash, as well. The ash castle had withstood the siege, but the other two volcanoes were now conquered by the snow domain. As Sunny watched, a startling change took place. Two pillars of lava shot out of the conquered volcanoes, rapidly solidifying in the cold air. At the same time, the snowstorm veiling the distant mountains moved south, consuming the world. It flowed past the ash castle, sparing it the elemental fury, and completely obscured the neighboring volcanoes. Just then, Kai landed on the ash beside him. What is going on? Why did they retreat? Sunny hesitated for a while, struggling against the powerful winds as he glanced into the swirling mass of snow that swallowed the world, sparing only the billowing clouds of ash above the ash castle. They retreated because their time ran out. It seems that snow figures can only move at dawn. He paused for a moment, then added slowly. I guess the ash figures can only move at dusk, then. Sunny imagined ash blowing across the sea of crimson clouds, turning into obsidian bridges in the fiery glow of the dying sun. Yes, that would make sense. He glanced at Kai. As for what is going on, I think we will see soon. Two more squares were conquered by the snow domain. Just as he finished speaking, the violent winds suddenly settled down, and the great snowstorm passed. Dark clouds still boiled above the ash castle, but the rest of the world was resting under a clear blue sky now. The other two volcanoes had disappeared. Or rather, transformed. The deep calderas were buried under solidified lava, turning into sharp peaks. The thick layers of ash had been blown away by the wind. The dark slopes were stripped bare, and then covered in snow. Two snowy peaks stood where the fuming volcanoes had been just minutes ago, and the ash castle was now completely surrounded by the snow domain. It was the last black square left on the board. Well, that sucks. Sunny sighed, then patted Kai on the shoulder. I'm going to be quite busy, but you can rest until evening. We'll do something exciting then. Kai blinked a couple of times. Sure, wait. What are we going to do in the evening? Sunny simply shrugged. I have no idea, yet. But, it is bound to be exciting. Doesn't it? With that, he turned back and headed back to the ash castle. Some time later, Sunny was sitting on the floor, feeling a little miserable. These damn demons. Ariel had done something incredible, hiding 49 mountains inside a game board and populating them with powerful abominations. The demon of dread was truly great and awful. But, that godly bastard. Did he not think to provide the poor nightmare creatures imprisoned in his game with basic necessities? There was no food to be found anywhere, unless Sunny wanted to dine on an infinite amount of worm meat. Much worse, there was no water. The figures of the snow domain could at least melt the snow to quench their thirst, but what was he supposed to do? Was he supposed to melt ash? How would that work? Sunny shook his head dejectedly. Of course, he did not really need to eat or drink. As a supreme demigod, he could simply sustain himself by absorbing essence, and more than that, he was a shadow, not a real human. But not needing food and not wanting to eat were two different matters, otherwise, he would not have been pampering Neffis with delicious meals at every opportunity. There was Kai to consider, as well. As a saint, he could last quite a while without water, but not to the degree of not needing it at all. Perhaps Ariel had not designed this game for humans. One more problem to solve. As Sunny was relaxing on the soft ash, there was a lot of activity around him. After all, just because he was sitting and doing nothing didn't mean that he was doing nothing. All around him, the shades of the crystal wasps were busy at work. There were a couple of dozen of them left intact, while the rest were being rebuilt and repaired within the dark depths of his soul. Some were collecting soul shards of their fallen kin, or perhaps even retrieving them from their own corpses, while some were gathering and sorting crystal fragments themselves. Sunny observed his worker wasps with a curious expression, wondering if they would be able to focus sunlight into destructive beams with their obsidian wings. If they could, then he would be able to melt the snow on the mountains from a distance, then collect the water in some kind of giant reservoir. As he considered this matter, Kai descended from above and landed on the ash near him. Glancing at Slayer, who was standing motionlessly behind Sunny, he bowed politely and offered her the short sword she had lent him previously. "Thank you, Lady Slayer." Slayer glanced at him before accepting the sword and sheathing it silently. Kai shivered under her gaze, then sat down near Sunny and exhaled slowly. Sunny looked at him. "How are your wounds?" Kai had been caught in that first solar attack, but it was hard to say how bad his burns were underneath the armor. The charming archer shook his head with a smile. "It's nothing serious. As I mentioned, I am not easily burned." Sunny clicked his tongue. "That might be true, but we are stuck here without a healer, and there are numerous battles ahead. Such small wounds will accumulate if we're not careful." His own back was shredded pretty badly. Luckily, he healed at breathtaking speed as a supreme. This wound would be gone in no more than a day. Of course, a new one would very likely take its place. Kai hesitated for a few seconds, then said suddenly, We really defeated 100 great beasts, didn't we?" He shook his head in disbelief. Sunny lingered with the answer. Eventually, he said, "I guess we did. That was a humbling experience, wasn't it?" Kai chuckled. "Humbling? I wouldn't say that. I think it was more of an unbelievable experience." He glanced at Sunny, swept his hair back, and then said ruefully, "I know that I'll regret asking, but that was probably a routine battle for you, wasn't it?" Sunny studied Kai for a few seconds, then shook his head with a faint smile. "No, actually, that was a novel level of peril even for me. 2,332 payday." Sunny chuckled. "Actually, I haven't felt this weak in a long while." It was a good reminder, though I was beginning to grow arrogant. Kai stared at him incredulously for a bit. "Beginning, did you say? Beginning to grow arrogant?" Sunny gave him a reproachful look and laughed. "Ah, right, your first impression of me was meeting the Lord of Shadows. Don't let it deceive you, though, that haughty guy is merely one of the roles I played. The real me is not nearly as conceited." He scoffed. "I mean, does someone as incredibly wealthy, unimaginably powerful, and unbearably handsome as I even have to be conceited?" Kai blinked a couple of times. "Indeed, I think I understand. I had to play the role of myself for a long time, too, back when I was a singer." "I guess you had your reasons." He paused for a moment, then asked curiously, "But what is the real you like, then?" Sunny shrugged. "The real me? Oh, I am a modest man with modest goals. All I really want is to run a quaint cafe, make a little money on the side by selling memories, become a god, and go on romantic dates with my girlfriend from time to time." Kai stared at him silently for a moment. "Excuse me, what was that in the middle?" Sunny smiled brightly. "What, becoming a god? Isn't that a given? One can't even run a cafe in peace these days without becoming a god first. It is honestly annoying. Plus, my angelic girlfriend is a tad ambitious, so I have to keep up." Kai coughed a few times. Sunny, meanwhile, glanced at the pile of soul shards the obsidian wasps had dutifully put in front of him. The shards shone gorgeously, dispelling the deep darkness of the ash castle. His eyes glinted. "Look at that, Kai. Dozens of supreme soul shards. Can you even imagine how much this pile costs? That is, at least a crapton of credits right there." Kai glanced at the radiant shards, remained silent for a moment, then smiled with a hint of wistfulness in his mesmerizing green eyes. "Oh, indeed, you reminded me of someone just now, when you said that." Sunny glanced at him briefly. "You mean Aiko, right? She used to work for you at one point, didn't she?" Kai nodded. "Yeah, she was my manager after I awakened. But we haven't seen each other in a while. How is she doing?" Sunny let out a laugh. "Aiko, oh, she is having a blast. It is a bit funny, she used to run a gambling den in the Bright Castle, but now she pretty much runs the entire Dark City. She also manages Shadow Clan's network all over both worlds. Running a secret organization of that scale is a complicated affair, so she spends a lot of time in Bastion." Kai let out a quiet sigh. "That's good. I'm happy that she's happy. Although, to be honest, I am a little surprised. We went our separate ways because I wanted to follow the path of ascension and use my power for a noble cause, while she wanted nothing to do with causes after the Forgotten Shore. I thought she wanted to be a civilian. So, I didn't expect her to end up as a sovereign's personal assistant." Sunny scratched the back of his head. "Well, it just ended up like that. I didn't set out to exploit her that way. Initially, I simply hired her to help me run a memory shop." But one thing led to another, and before I knew it, she was in charge of my entire operation. He blinked a couple of times. Come to think of it, wait, have I been conned? Did she hoodwink me into bankrolling her shady underground empire with my fortune? Kai laughed. No, no, I am sure you are exploiting a mere awakened like her, Supreme Sunless, and not the other way around. Definitely. Sunny grinned. Yeah, naturally. Obviously. Finishing enjoying the view of the soul shards, he turned to several piles of crystal fragments instead. The obsidian wasps had chosen only the suitable ones, separating them into several large piles by form and size. He picked one up and traced his finger along its edge. His jade skin was instantly cut, which was impressive enough. No blood seeped out of the cut, and a few seconds later, it had already healed itself. Wonderful. The soul shards would become the anchors for weaves of the memories he wanted to create, but the remains of the crystal wasps could serve as an excellent medium for the enchantments. After all, memories had to be crafted from something, and materials harvested from GRE at nightmare creatures were superior to permanently manifested shadows. These crystalline shards were especially sharp and durable, making them perfect for crafting arrowheads. Actually, there was someone here who was quite amazing at crafting arrows from similar materials. Slayer had spent thousands of years making her own weapons from what she could find in the Shadow Realm, and the most readily available resource there was obsidian. Sunny glanced at her and raised an eyebrow. Hey, how about helping me with this? She stared at him chillingly, which made him clear his throat. Oh, right, it was time for another payment. Sunny used the same shard of crystal to slice open his forearm. This time, the cut quickly swelled with blood. Slayer finally moved, lowering herself to one knee beside him under Kai's startled gaze. She put her hands together and placed them under his arm, allowing his blood to flow into them. When the chalice of her hands was nearly full, Sunny stemmed the bleeding and watched as she raised them to her veiled lips. A few moments later, the blood was gone. Slayer did not really drink it, instead, it was simply absorbed into her ebony skin, disappearing forever behind the veil. Her dark eyes were distant, full of some vague, indescribable emotions for a heartbeat. Then, the hint of emotion was replaced by the familiar, cold malice. Kai stammered. What was that? Watching his cut heal, Sunny chuckled and glanced at him with a smile. That, he shrugged. That was payday. 2333 pit stop. Slayer seemed satisfied with her payment. Of course, it was a little tactless of her to demand his blood when they were imprisoned in a lethal demonic realm, but actually, she was being unexpectedly considerate. After all, it did not escape Sunny's attention that the murderous shadow had foregone their usual duel. He had fully expected that Slayer would attack him as soon as there was a chance, but she seemed to have decided against it. This was the first time Slayer spared him the hassle of beating her into submission. I guess we're making progress. Tossing the crystal shard back onto the pile, Sunny pointed to Kai's bow. Give that here. Receiving it, he studied the weapon thoughtfully. Unlike the arrows, he was not planning to turn the bow into a memory. Doing that would have required imbuing it with permanence, which would weaken it. But that did not mean that he could not enchant it. Sunny had created plenty of enchanted items that were not memories, after all, like various implements for The Radiant EMPO Ryam and the Beast Farm. The fundamental weaves shared by all memories, and which therefore defined what a memory was, were so ingeniously designed and useful that there was usually no reason not to bestow them on a weapon or a piece of equipment. But that did not mean that they were necessary. It was just that the spell weave had to be woven a bit differently for an enchanted item that was not a memory. For example, Awakened usually needed to activate the enchantments of their memories with essence, and only the essence of the person to whom the memory belonged could do the job. The memory itself was a concept moored to the master's soul, while manifesting it turned their soul essence into matter, so there was an innate connection between Awakened and their memories. An enchanted item was different, since it was inherently ownerless. So, Sunny had to either weave the identity of the master into the enchantments or change their activation principle entirely, allowing them to accept anyone's soul essence. The latter offered a sea of possibilities. Sunny was especially concerned about Kai's reserve of essence. The charming archer was merely a transcendent beast, after all, so his essence capacity was 1/7 of what Sunny himself possessed as a saint. The enemies they faced, meanwhile, were immensely powerful. Kai would need as much firepower as he could get to fight them effectively, but truly potent enchantments would burn through his soul essence in moments. There would be no time for him to fully replenish it either, considering that they might need to enter battle twice a day. Sunny had to strike a careful balance between potency and sustainability. If the bow could accept anyone's essence, however, he could assist Kai by using his own. He could even make the bow an essence vessel and saturate it with powerful supreme essence in advance. Sunny sighed. Now that he had become the ruler of the Ash domain, which was reduced to a single volcano, he felt like a pauper again. His tens of thousands of shades were gone, and the seemingly boundless river of spirit essence that constantly flowed into his soul had run dry. Compared to what he usually enjoyed, there was merely a trickle. So, he couldn't go all out and supply Kai with an ocean of his essence. Additionally, Sunny did not know how to make his essence follow the charming archer's commands. It was an interesting challenge, though he was not sure that he could solve it, but he felt like he could cheat it somehow, at least to some degree. Yeah, that solution might work. This one, too, I just have to be modest in my ambition. He could not replace Kai's essence with his own, but he could at least supplement it. As for enchantments themselves, Sunny was no stranger to crafting bows and arrows. He had gone through the process of designing the optimal combination both for Rain and For Slayer, so all he had to do was adjust a few things with Kai's aspect in mind. For example, unlike most archers, Kai could see through solid objects. So, wouldn't it be prudent to design him an arrow that could phase through matter? Wait, such an arrow would be amazing in the hands of any skilled archer. Why had he not made one before? Well, it was probably because making things pass through matter was not that easy. He could potentially play with tangible and intangible states, possibly even use an altered version of the unseen enchantment of the Moonlight Shard, but there were a few obstacles to overcome. Making an arrow pass through solid matter was easy in theory, but in practice, there was no such thing as easy matter in the dream realm. All materials had their own mystical properties, especially so the bodies of living beings. So, as much as Sunny wanted to make an arrow that would phase through the armor of a nightmare creature and strike directly at the tender flesh beneath, he couldn't, for now. Making an arrow that could phase through a mass of rock and strike an adversary hiding behind it, though. That was a possibility. Oh, my, I'm inspired. Summoning 4 shadow hands, Sunny lamented the absence of Weaver's needle and got to work. He would work on the bow first, then the quiver, and finally craft a few arrows. Kai needed some kind of melee weapon, as well. The weapon could be crafted from the larger pieces of shattered crystal left behind by the slain wasps. There were supreme materials and supreme soul shards at Sunny's disposal, so he would be able to create something truly destructive. The only limit was time. He had until sunset to prepare Kai for battle, so he had to be modest in his ambition. That's alright, I can take it one step at a time. He could weave a basic enchantment for the bow and create a couple of arrows today. Then, he could continue to improve the bow and add new arrows to Kai's arsenal after each battle. There would be more dead abominations and more materials for him to work with, as well. His beasts would continue to grow stronger with each day. His army of shades would continue to grow in number, as well. Which was a good thing, because, at the end of it all, they would have to face the Snow Tyrant. We are going to need all the power in the world to kill that thing, for sure. Sunny became engrossed in weaving. 2344 Bitter Solitude. As Sunny worked, Kai remained silent for a while, resting. It did not seem like he was ready to sleep, and there was nothing really for him to do on the barren volcano. The charming archer glanced at the walls of the crumbling fortress for a while, or rather, through them. He was observing their enemies, most likely. The remaining crystal wasps, the snow worm, the clockwork giant. Stop staring at the frightening nightmare creatures, Kai. That will only wind up more, not help you recover. Kai slowly glanced away from whatever horror he was observing and focused on Sunny. Eventually, he asked, that is a strange form of sorcery. I don't think I've ever seen anyone enchant something in that way before. Sunny nodded. I don't think there's anyone else capable of performing this form of sorcery in the world, anymore. I'm the only one. Kai had to have an idea of what his aspect abilities were. So, he would know that creating memories was a skill Sunny possessed, not an ability. The charming archer glanced at him with interest. How did you learn it? Sunny responded without looking up, his 6 hands forming the spell weave inside the black bow, one string of shadow essence at a time. Oh, one of my attributes allows me to see the spell weave of memories, while another one allows me to touch it. One time, I was in a pretty desperate situation. So I figured out how to create a rudimentary memory to escape it. He smiled faintly. Then, it was just a lot of research, study, and experimentation. I slowly taught myself how to do more by watching what the spell does. He glanced at Kai briefly. What about you? You seem to be perfectly suited for shaping, with that aspect of yours. Have you not tried to master it? Kai chuckled. Oh, I tried. I seem to be a special case, though. Some people have a talent for shaping, while some people don't. What I have, however, is negative talent. Sunny raised an eyebrow. How so? Kai shrugged with a smile. Because of my aspect, the true names I invoke are extremely powerful. In exchange, however, it is especially difficult for me to master them. Lady Nephis thinks that it's the way for the world to balance things out. He sighed. I can't even speak the names as a human, at least not yet. I can invoke them pretty easily as a dragon, though, almost as if a dragon's maw is meant to bellow them. But it's of no use, really, since I can barely keep the names in my mind. Even after years of effort, I've only mastered a meager few. Sunny contemplated his words for a few seconds. I'm not buying that someone like you is not meant to be a shaper. Maybe you just have not met the condition to master the sorcery of names, yet. Things will probably change dramatically when you reach a higher rank. Alternatively, it might be connected to your aspect legacy. Or not. You have not received it yet, have you? Kai shook his head. No, but I don't see how an aspect legacy can help me become a better sorcerer. Aren't legacy relics usually just powerful memories? Sunny chuckled. Usually, US. But not always. Oh, and technically, legacy relics do not need to be powerful, they just need to complement your aspect greatly. He pointed to himself with one of his 42 fingers. Take me, for example. My aspect legacy is actually a skill set of sorts. I developed it myself, but the spell had helped me take the first step, or rather, take it faster. It also used to reward me with relics when I reached certain milestones. Then there is Nephis, whose aspect legacy is based in understanding, and who is rewarded for it with nothing except knowledge. He returned to weaving the strings of shadow essence. So even though most aspect legacies are indeed memories, or more rarely echoes, not all of them are. They remained silent for a while. At some point, however, Kai studied him with a neutral expression and asked tentatively. Sunny, can I ask you something? Sunny nodded while keeping his focus on the black blow. Kai hesitated for a few seconds. Before, you told me that my survival would depend on my companions, while their survival would depend on me. That no one survives in the dream realm alone. Sunny raised an eyebrow. So I did. Kai lingered for a while. But you were living in Godgrave all alone when we met. A solitary saint, all alone in the world. Did you speak from experience, or was it simply common wisdom? Sunny smiled faintly. A saint was someone who had braved the dream realm and conquered 3 nightmares. As far as Sunny knew, there was only one person who had conquered the 3rd nightmare alone, the Princess of War, Morgan of Valor. Kai seemed to be curious about his previous solitude. He sighed. I spoke from experience. I had someone to depend on, too, in the past. I had companions. You were one of them, dummy. Kai glanced at him mournfully, not saying anything, and yet, it seemed like he wanted Sunny to say more. Sunny chuckled. Well, it did not end well. He picked up one more soul shard and placed it into the weave, carefully anchoring innumerable strings of essence to it. It did not end well because I betrayed my companions, and lost them. I want to say that I had a good reason to abandon them, maybe I did, but in the end, it was a selfish reason. I am a very selfish person, Kai. I am a very greedy person as well. My selfish greed was my undoing. What would have happened if Sunny had stayed with his cohort and faced the first seeker with them? If he had made a different wish, would it have been for the best? Or would he have spent the rest of his days living in regret? Had he made an unforgivable mistake? He did not know. He did know that he regretted losing his companions bitterly, though. Some days, it felt too bitter to endure. Kai shook his head slowly. You do not look like someone who was undone, Sunny. There was some truth to that. Sunny was a sovereign, after all. He glanced at Kai and smiled. Looks can be deceiving.